guys, I'm Ryan Bossery from Rywire, and today I wanted to do a little something different. I wanted to share with you guys how to program a P14 PDM. This is our newest PDM. It's 14 outputs, hence the P14. It has the ability to use a CAN bus controlled keypad. We have keypads in stock for 12 button. We can also get 8 button, 15 button, all the way up to 20 buttons. Pretty cool. It's easy to use, and I want to show you guys kind of how the programming works. So hopefully by the end of this, you could kind of backwards engineer your current file and you can make changes relatively easy, or you could start from scratch if you were to just buy the unit itself. This is basically like a rundown on how I programmed the modules that you guys are getting as kits, hopefully, today. So let me go ahead and kind of start. So I'm going to show you guys the file menu here. There's going to be only a few things that we're really going to look at, or that we really need to look at. So first is going to be just file save. So that's your just Control S function. If you make a change, press Control S and it'll save that file that you're currently working on. I encourage you to modify, save as, and change the name if you guys are going to tweak the file that's on the unit. Next is going to be load file from PC, send to module if online. Right now, currently, I'm offline, so that means that my PDM is connected to my computer, but it's not like ignition switched on yet, so you're not going to be able to really like upload anything to the unit yet. So that's going to be the one to grab a file from the computer. And then we're going to do, let's see, another good one that we're going to use is go online and retrieve module file. So if you guys wanted to start like kind of backwards engineering or playing with my file, then you go to go online, retrieve module file. You have to be powered up and connected like key on your car, or if you're test benching it, you have to have the power and the ground hooked up with the ignition switch, yellow black wire powered. So pretty easy to do to actually test bench this thing and you know, work with it on a test bench. And that's actually what I'm doing right now. I'm not sitting in a car. I'm actually at home right now with my unit just on the table. So what I'm going to do, the first thing we want to do here is load file from PC, send to module if online. We have some blank files and stuff here. I literally just loaded this software onto this computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a P14 blank. There's P12, that's our older unit, still a good unit, just doesn't do CAN bus. And then P30 is our larger unit that has CAN. So I'm going to open up P14 blank. What you can do is you can, you know, kind of make yourself at home, and you can make these smaller depending on the size of your guys' screen. This may need to be reworked. You can also kind of click and drag these over if you want a little bit more space. What these are your just live view stuff. So, you know, I'll just kind of do it like this, get it out of the way. Total amps, so that's how much current basically the unit is showing, the temperature, and then the battery volts. So that's going to be good for when you guys are test benching, or if your car is low on battery volts, you could see it right there that maybe you're having connection problems. You might drop, you know, below 12 or something, and it might start to like glitch out, you know, maybe under 10 volts. It's going to start like not accepting uploads. You know, your starter's not going to work anymore. So you can see where battery voltage is at on the car. This is all live view for switched inputs. So you can see if something is switching on, and this is PWM. So we can get into that later. That's pulse width stuff. So you can actually like speed up or slow down outputs, and that's only available on output 4 and output 8, and that's why it shows it. And then with a percentage, that's live view. And then outputs, when an output's on, it'll show you, and it'll say how many volts it's actually, how many amps it's drawing. So everything right there is in live view. It's pretty cool. So you could just move all the stuff around. What I'm going to do first and foremost is I am going to show you guys configuration on the top, and we're going to go to master switch. So right now it's default to low volts. That's not how our units are actually set up. Our units are set up for high volts. So what the difference is here, high volts is actually switched power. Low volts is going to be just grounded, and open is basically when the top of the unit stud, the power, is powered, then it's just going to be on. So this is how basically your ignition switch is keyed on. So ignition switch high volts. Okay, that's how we default set it. And what this wire is, it's a yellow black wire on your pinout, and it is pin number 5, master switch, yellow black. I'm looking at the wiring diagram right now. I'm gonna switch to high. Active delay, so you can have a deactivate and an activate delay on that. So the unit will, take X amount of seconds to turn on or turn off or whatever. There's reasons for this, and it's pretty cool, but let's just not get into that right now. I'm just gonna say, okay, so that part's done. Configure, I'm just gonna work my way down this list. Best way to do it, actually, when this software was developed, there was the process was, in this is how you would set up the module. So master switch, and we got switched inputs. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna close this. That was your switched inputs, configuration, switched inputs, okay? So the way that this layout is, the switched inputs, outputs, and functions are already open for you. First thing I'm gonna do is go add. All right, so I like to kind of use my name for my inputs and outputs and functions as something easily visual to understand. So input name, I'm gonna just do lowercase on all my inputs, and I'm just gonna go switch SW, and let's see, our switch 1 input is fan. It's a green wire. So I'm just gonna write fan. Okay, easy as that. Switch fan. I'll remember that all my lowercase stuff is that. Input source. So it's not master switch, okay? It's switch 1, pin 30. So I'm gonna make sure this is pin 30. On my pinout, it says pin 30, switch 1. Wire size is 20, fan, green, cool. All good, that's that one. High volts, okay, active state. This wire is going to be a wire from potentially an ECU that's going to control my fan output, which we haven't set up yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, generally ECUs like low volts, and that's low side or ground triggered. Ground, it's better to trigger a output with a ground if you can. Sometimes you run out of inputs, switches to be able to control these, but right now I'm just going to leave all these switched items as low volts. Activate, deactivate, let's just leave it. It's all good. Let's add another one. Switch. Let's do this one, switch 2. So let me just find that on the pinout. Switch 2, I remember what it is, but I want to find it and double check. I think it was starter. Okay, input. Switch input to starter. Okay, it's pin 32. All right, so switch starter. Switch input number 2, pin 32, cool. Kind of double checking myself along the way. This is going to be starter trigger. So this one, we're just gonna leave, I mean, this could totally be high volts as well. But in this case, it's gonna be low. So let's do it low. Like basically what this would be is this wire, you could potentially just ground it to activate the starter motor, or you could power it. And a lot of factory cars, if you guys are wiring this into a kind of factory ignition switch, you're gonna probably end up with high volts. But for this sake, I'm going to go ahead and leave that at low volts. I could change that later, but let's just go ahead and go, okay? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and add another one, give myself a little bit more space. Switch. Input number 3, if I have one. You don't have to have inputs on, you don't have to have everything set up all the time. You just add them as you need them. Switch, okay, so let's just, I don't see 3. Maybe I'm just like tripping, but I'm just like looking at a wiring diagram right now. I don't see 3. So I see 4. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call this one switch input. I'm gonna do headlights, taillights. Yeah, I'm holding too many things here and trying to type with one hand. So let's see. GHGS, headlights, taillights. You could totally switch this up and, you know, dedicate it for taillights or dedicate it for headlights. But just because this is a 14 output unit, we got headlights, taillights on the same one. And what we're gonna do is have this on input 4, because I didn't see 3. We can always come back and add it. So input 4, it's pin 20, that's right. And we change that to low volts. Boom. Here again, I could totally add stuff later or whatever. I'm just gonna kind of work through this. So I went through and added all of my switch name for all my inputs. And these are all gonna be either ECU triggered or toggle switch triggered. And you can make the decision if you wanted to toggle switch them with grounds or with powers. So let me run through this. So we got switch names. And if you guys notice here for switch numbers 1, 2, 4, well, I realized on my sheet that brake light switch, so switch brake switch is 3. So we're not out of luck here. This is super easy. So I just want to put this in order. I'm just going to go move up, 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 up. One more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we are using 1 through 9 of our switches. Dedicated for fan, starter, brake switch, headlights, taillights, fuel pump, spare, water pump, high beam. This is like, I could use whatever I want for this. And I just decided I would call it a spare, and then I would have 2 of my most popular options, which is for a water pump trigger or for high beams. So that's that. Right indicator, left indicator, infinity switch. So when you have an AEM infinity, you basically have to like power, the ECU has its own relay and it's got this low side trigger and the power goes back and forth. It's a really weird thing, but I just throw this in here for the infinity guys, and we'll get to that later. That's not really important. Pretty cool though, you can actually go through this and see if you made any mistakes. So I can go and make sure I didn't spell anything wrong, which I'll double check later, whatever. I'm pretty bad at spelling, so definitely would want to double check that so you guys don't think I'm an idiot. Switch numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 9. You can count that. You can see what pin it's on, make sure that my wiring diagram is correct, and then you know for yourself like what you're looking at. Active state, low, 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 all the way down. Some of these can be high, easy to change. Deactivate and reactivate. I don't normally mess with this too much, but sometimes with the infinity switch, we do mess with it. So that's that for all. These are all hardwired inputs, okay? The next thing that I wanna go through is we're gonna have CAN stuff. So our CAN-based keypad is going to need switched inputs. So we're gonna make a whole nother list under here that's all gonna be keypad switches. Oh no, I fucked up, help. I don't know what happened. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm recording or not, but the thing's gone. Oh, so wait, this? What do I do? Okay. Oh, is it? It's recording right now. Huh? Can you help me? I don't know what I mean. I don't know what you mean.
You're not sharing the screen. you do this part?
I don't know. I have no idea.
When was the last time you like paused or whatever?
Just right now, I think. I tried to pause.
I thought when I was here last time you were sharing it.
Keypad, have that written down here, is ignition. So let's just go ahead and call this one switch keypad. It might get a little long, but I don't really mind that. Then I'm going to call this one IGN. So ignition, that works for me. Which one is this? So all the way to the bottom here. So this is all the hardwired ones that we got. And then keypad 1, button 1. I think that's what I said. It was going to be button 1. And we're going to have to do high volts. So the reason why it's high volts is because all the CAN bus based systems switch on high. So that's just something that you got to know. And if you look at my file, you'll notice that they're all high. So it's just the way you got to do it. Activate, deactivate, leave that. And then I'm going to just slam all these in real quick and pause it. Okay, so what I've done so far is I've added a bunch of buttons, I guess total 10. Let's start over here. So I did switch keypad ignition, and that's keypad 1, button 1. Obviously, we can do multiple keypads, so I just have everything on keypad 1 so far. And then they're all going to be high volts, and then I didn't do anything with activate and deactivate. Also notice that I don't have a button 3 or a button 9. Those aren't set up. You guys could set those up if you wanted to. So out of that 12 position keypad, we are only utilizing those buttons. Excuse me. Okay. So yeah, we're only doing, we're not using 3 or 9. You guys could set those up if you wanted to. And let me just double check myself here. So we have keypad ignition, keypad starter, keypad fan, keypad fuel. So what fan and fuel are, those are actually overrides. So you don't necessarily have to actually use that to turn on your fan or turn on your fuel pump. We can do a logic function down here so you can have it literally as like an override switch. So you could activate the fan if you felt like that, you wanted to for some reason, or if you were just keying on and your engine wasn't running and you wanted to purge out and change your fuel, you could treat the fuel keypad button as just like a fuel out. There's some other cool things that later we'll get into, but basically the rule of thumb here is that you don't really have to utilize the keypad. Some things you might only run on a keypad, like an indicator left or right or something like that. But yeah, we have fan, fuel, those are overrides. Spare water pump, that could be an override, depending on how you wanted to treat that. Main lights, so that's just, probably like headlights, if you will. And then aux lights, so those are gonna be like either a high beam headlight or maybe a fog light of some sort, or if you had some kind of a work light, excuse me, you could add that. Left indicator, right indicator, those are pretty self-explanatory. Hazards, so that's, just like a flasher. You don't have to use hazards, but I feel like it's good if it's some kind of a street car or a drag car where you wanted to turn on the light or something. If you've won, I don't know, your call. So this is how I just set it up from kind of the factory, if you will. Next thing that I really wanted to show was I wanted to add an ignition switch. So I'm going to add, and I'm just going to call this one switch ignition switch. This is something that we may use as like a placeholder for now, but might need it later. And then see how it says master switch. That's the one that I want. And I'm going to leave it for now as high volts. Say okay. I want this at the top, so I'm just going to move it all the way up. So it kind of starts as like master switch, and then it goes 1 through 9 for the low side switches in this case, and then all the keypad switches down this way. So obviously, you can add tons of these things, but I'll just pull this up for now, and we know that it's there. And then the next thing that I wanted to do is outputs. So there again, I can like close this. I don't have to have it open, and I can go, I lied to you. So the next thing in line is going to be functions. So let's close this, and then let's go to functions. All right. So what I want to do here with functions, drag this down a little bit. These are basically going to be logic-based commands. So let's kind of just get into this. I'm going to add a new function. I'm going to have basically caps lock on this one, and I'm just going to call it function, and then the name of the function. I don't really have good notes in front of me of how I'm doing this per se, but what I guess I'd like to do is just kind of start from the top. So my first main switch is fan. So I'm just going to call this one function. I already have caps lock on. Okay, fan. So function fan. Okay. I'm going to add one. So for now, I am going to give this command. Okay, what am I doing? So let's do true. Switch input. Okay, I'm going to pause this. All right, guys, so I'm going to just kind of jump the order a little bit here. And I am going to name my outputs first. I kind of realized that I would rather get names on these outputs just so when I get to my functions, I can have some kind of a name. I don't really know if that's like the right way to do it per se, but it's just the way that I'm going to do it. So right now it's already kind of set up as like out. So I'm just going to leave that as out, and then I'm going to name my first output. So I'm going to look on my sheet, and I found it right here, output 1, fan 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally name that fan. Yeah, no. Okay, hold on. Caps lock. Let's just go like this. Fan 1. Control. I'm going to leave that off right now. I'm going to go back, and I don't know. I mean, it's like I prefer to just see what they are for my output names. So I'm just going to name everything right now. Not going to really worry about fuse current. You know what? I totally can. Let's just do it. So fan, I'm just going to have like a default setting on my fan. I may change this later, guys, but let's just call it like 15 amps. I know that 15 amps will probably be able to be big enough for a single up to a 10-inch fan. It just kind of depends on how big the motor is on it. We can always test this stuff later and fine tune that. But let's just go ahead and just do a conservative, but not too small, 15 amps. Fuse reset delay. So basically, like if it trips, it's gonna like quote unquote fuse, and the reset delay is gonna be 3 seconds. So that's pretty good right there. Fuse resets allowed. So I normally just like put this number at 3, because I figure if the output trips and resets 3 times, like by the 3rd time you got an issue for sure. I mean, you can change this number to 0, and it was at 0 or 1 or all the way up to 100. So I'm just going to put that at 3. It's pretty conservative. Enable open circuit detect. They give you some information down here. You can read about that. It can detect fuel injectors, ignition coils. I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it unchecked. Unlimited fuse resets allowed. So that's to override this number of 100. and you can have it just trip, trip, trip. You could have the fuse, trip as many times, unlimited. So let's just, for now, like I'm gonna leave the control off. So literally I'm naming it and I'm gonna put these couple numbers in. So I'm gonna do that for all these outputs and I'll be right back. All right, so I went ahead and I named all my outputs. Started out with out and then capital fan 1, fan 2, etc. So what I did was I got outputs 1 through 14. These are the 1 and 2 fans. These are the 1 and 2 fuels. So what you could do if you had a really big fan or a really big fuel pump is you could stack these. As long as your control, your fuse current, your fuse reset delay, and then the resets allowed, all the information basically here is the same between fan 1 and fan 2, as well as the wire size and length is the same. You could actually stack them, and let's say that you wanted to drive, well, you can go on these first 6 outputs, you can go all the way up to 22 amps. But if you were exceeding 22 amps and you had maybe what would be like one of those, just like a really, really big fuel pump draw, I've seen them as high as like 25 or closer to 27 amps. You could stack the 2 outputs together. In this case, you would stack fan 1 and fan 2 to a giant fan, or fuel 1 and fuel 2 to a giant fuel pump, and you could achieve up to 44 amps on that output, which should be totally enough to run. Some people may question that, their fans draw more than 15, but what that is like inrush current that's changing those numbers. So if you were to monitor this, you might see in real time over here on your output that it draws like 40 or 50 amps for the first split second, but then it drops down very, very quick within like a 3-second like fuse reset delay time. So as long as you're kind of like within that time frame and it steadies out to about 15 amps, it's really common for electric motors and pumps to see crazy high inrush current. I mean, you could see 100 amps for a split second, but the fact is, having that much amps inrush, it's not going to burn the wire. It's not going to hurt the wire. The wire's not going to really get hot if it's just that fraction of a second that inrush current is hitting. Otherwise, you'd see it steady out at, under 22 amps more than likely. there's a few exceptions to stuff like this, but yeah, for the most part, 22 amps is a huge output. You don't really need anything on a race car that's going to be more than that. It's very, very rare to see that. So that's kind of how it works. You could stack them together, just make sure that all that criteria is the same. So what I've done is just labeled all these outputs. Let's also look at these wiper ones. So these are optional wiper. It has low speed and high speed control. So if you look at, let's actually look at high first, wiper high. If we want to look here at wiper high, I just changed it to output spare front / wiper high. Okay, so you don't have to use this as a wiper, but you can, set your control, which we haven't done yet, fuse current, the reset delays, and the amount allowed, enable open circuit, just like normal, right? So this can be paralleled. There's basically information down here that you can read, okay? But I want you to look at wiper low. So wiper low, enable wiper motor brake, and there's information down here. You may want to select that depending on if you're using this output for wipers. But these, like I said, are not dedicated to wipers, but they can be used and have specialty controls like this output 13 has a special control for the wiper motor brake. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that. So right now I just have all my outputs named and kind of just thrown in here. So at least I have a visual representation of what these things are. So the next thing I'd like to do is move to the functions. All right, so for functions, I'm going to go ahead and go add The first function that I want to name is, let's just do fuel first. I can always change the order of these things, but like the first function that I wanted to show is for fuel pump. So what we're going to do here is just literally call this function fuel, okay? And then what we'll do is we will add, and then what I'm going to do here is the first one I want to do is a true command, and I want this one to be for my keypad fuel. So what I'm trying to do here is basically make it so I have two different functions per output. The thought process behind this is that we want to be able to have the ECU control the fuel pump, but we also want to have the driver to be able to control that fuel pump as like an override. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to call it true, and then I'm going to do my keypad. So if I can go here and find switch keypad fuel, okay? Activate, deactivate, let's just leave these at zeros for now. Okay. And then what I want to do is I want to have an OR statement. So OR, the reason for this is there's your keypad fuel is true. So your keypad on a press, or you want the ECU to be able to add it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do ECU switch. Let's do true again. And then what I'm going to do is the ECU fuel. So switch the SW, and then when I find it, I wish you guys could just help me. Here it is, switch fuel pump, okay? Deactivate, leave it all those at 0. Okay, so function fuel is named just like this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another function called function fuel power. You can name this whatever you want. This is just the way that I do it. Hopefully it's not too confusing. Function fuel, because it is, but we got to give it another one. So I just call this one power. Okay. I'm going to add that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this one be the toggle when keypad fuel changes from false to true. So toggle, okay? That's the press of the keypad, because you want it to toggle. You don't want it to be momentary. Like down here, there's like different stuff. Okay, what we want to do is we want toggle. All right. And then we're going to have the keypad be the command. So toggle when keypad. Okay, keypad, switch keypad fuel. So gotta make sure that it says fuel. We're on fuel. Everything's working out. Okay, now toggle when it goes from false to true. So it'd be false, it'd be off, and then you want to toggle when it goes true. So control source changes from false to true. Okay. All right, and let's say okay to that. So right now we made these two functions. We have fuel, and then we have fuel power. All right, so the function fuel is switch keypad fuel equals true, or switch from the ECU essentially, or like a toggle switch equals true. So or, either or. You could have it, the or be an and then you would need both of them to be true. So there's clever things, interesting things you could do with the PDM, and understanding the functions, these logic functions is key, because you have to think like a computer. And I honestly do not think like a computer. My brain is not wired that way. So understanding PDM logic was difficult for me to understand, but I'm starting to get it a little bit more. And then we made this other function for power, and that is the toggle command, essentially from false to true from the keypad. So we'll work down the way and get a few more of these done. All right, Jason, that whole section with functions, I kind of screwed up. So what I'd like to do is just start over with my functions. So if you could cut that and then start right now. All right, guys, functions, I wanted to go ahead and add my first function. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to just name this function. And the first one I want to do is just fuel. We can change the orders of these, but I wanted to get fuel out of the way. And I'm going to name this first one function fuel power. You could do really whatever you want as far as a name. This is just the way I like to do it. So function fuel power, add. All right, so what we're going to do here is we are going to do a toggle. So the reason why we're doing a toggle is because we want the keypad to be able to toggle and stay latched, not just momentary when you're holding it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, I'm going to find toggle. There's a ton of options. See, there's like, you can pulse ramp things, you can do ifs, ands, ors, buts, blah, 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 blah. So there's a million things to do. It's really cool. And I'm going to select toggle on this one. So what I'm going to do here with toggle is I'm going to select my keypad. So my keypad for fuel, because we're doing fuel on this one. So it's going to be the switch keypad fuel. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it from false to true. So it's like the keypad's not on, so it's false. And then when it's on, it's true. Okay. I'm going to say okay to that. And I'm going to say okay to this. So now we have a function for fuel power. All right, I'm going to add another one. I'm going to call this one function fuel, and then that's it, function fuel. Okay, I'm going to add that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a couple of controls, and they're going to be trues. So I'm going to just leave it as true. Okay, and then the first control is going to be for the ECU or this toggle. So it's just going to be switch. It's not going to be keypad. It's just going to be up here, switch. I got to find fuel. So switch fuel pump. There again, this is our low side command that would be coming in from an ECU or a toggle switch. I'm going to leave these at 0, so it'll be instant. Okay. Now I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to click OR. All right, because we're going to have this, which is the switch from the ECU, or a keypad, or actually in this case, a function. So I'm going to add true, switch, function fuel power. So that's going to basically take that toggle in and it's going to switch our output on. So I'll recap. These two, looks good to me. Okay. So right now we have function fuel power toggle when switch keypad fuel changes from false to true. And then we have down here the function fuel, which is our switch or our function. Okay, it's a little complicated. You can pretty much just backwards engineer that or just copy it. If you're adding any of these, you just do exactly what I just did to anything. Okay, and what I want to do now is I want to go back to my output and I want to essentially make it add up. So it's going to make it work. So fuel number 1, let's just do fuel 1. Double click. Now I'm going to do my control as my function. Now there's 2 that we have to choose from. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, that's why I named it function fuel. So it's really easy to just go, okay, I want my function fuel as my control. So that would work with this function. So you're basically making 2 because you kind of have to have both of them as like one tells the other what to do. And then when you're programming your output, you could just call it function fuel. So there's going to be 2 next to each other, but we kind of can think about it as this is just function fuel. So that's the first one. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do several more the same way. I'm going to go ahead and just do another one with you guys. We'll do fan. So let me do function fan power. So I'm gonna do the power ones first, add it. And I wanted to, what did I say? I'm doing toggling first. And then I am toggling my keypad for fan. So switch keypad fan, okay? And I'm gonna do false to true, okay. Okay. And I wrote dunction. That's cool. But look at how easy it is to change. Boom, now it's a function. It went from dunction to function, just like that. Let's add another one. Let's add a function this time instead of a dunction. And then let's do fan. So simple, no power, just fan, add. It's gonna be true. I'm gonna try to keep it in the exact same order. I could, in theory, switch these, but I don't want to. I want to keep it in order. So before it was switch fuel pump equals true. So I'm gonna do switch fan is true. Okay, okay. Go to or. So you don't want to click and, you want to click or. Add true. Fan power. Boom. Zeros. We want it instant. Okay. Okay. So these should look exactly the same. Function fuel power. Function fuel. Function fan power. Function fan. Toggle when keypad false true. Toggle when switch keypad function false true. Okay, these are the same. And then switch fuel pump equals true, or function fuel power equals true. Switch fan equals true, or function fan power equals true. All right, looks like I nailed it. Did it twice for you. Gonna add some more in just a second. Okay, what I've done so far is I've done some functions, and what I did is I just didn't want to bore you guys with importing all of this information here. So we did the fuel power and the fan power together, and then I just did the exact same thing for starter power with starter, and then I did a spare water pump power, and then spare water pump. So these are all just like literally the same all the way down. So each output basically has these two functions attached to it. Main lights, power, main lights, ignition switch. This one's a little bit different. I may end up changing this, but for right now, it's just an ignition switch. And the only thing that it's showing is that when that ignition switch wire, which is our yellow with a black stripe ignition switch, when that's powered, this is active. So that's it. It's a very simple function for now. It's probably going to get changed later. Function right indicator power, same thing. And function right indicator. And then we have function L indicator power. So clearly I kind of did a inconsistent typo there where I did L for left and then this one's spelled out right. I probably will change that, but just bear with me on that. So power and then L indicator. So all of these have just been, very straightforward. And then except for ignition, it's slightly different for now. Function hazard. So this one's a little different. The last key on the keypad, button 12, I think it is a hazard switch. So you guys don't have to leave this as a hazard switch, but by default, it's going to be a hazard switch. Toggle when function right indicator changes from true to false. So that's opposite of last time. Last time it was, for all the other ones, I should say, it was false to true. But in this case, we're going to have it changing from true to false. And so instead of it being or typical what we've been doing, it's an and function. and it'll say, and toggle when function L indicator changes from true to false. So that should work. You know, guys, I'm really not the best at this. Like, I'm gonna tell you straight up that I'm not the best at programming these things. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna try that. And if that works, then great. If it doesn't, then I'll go back in and I'll try to put on my computer logic thinking cap and try to think like a computer. And hopefully that's good. So right now, we have all these functions written, okay? Starting to get a little crazy on my computer here. So let me try to maximize my space. Here's all our switches. I'm gonna pull up switches. And then now I'm gonna focus back on outputs. So what I'm gonna do with outputs is I am going to give all these controls. So I've already done one for fuel. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through this and give all these controls. So this is my fan output 1. I want it to be function fan. Okay. Fan 2, same thing. Function fan. Fuel 1's done. Fuel 2, you could probably guess. I want this to be function fuel. I think that's right. Fan, 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 fan. Fuel, 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 fuel. Okay. Starter. I want this to be function starter. I gave it 18. You could change that number to 22. You could go down to, like, best thing to do is just check it on the car and then change the number. I'm gonna go ahead and just save this. I'm gonna say Control S. I just saved it. You can also go up to the top and you can go save file to PC, Control S. Okay. So this one, output coil and keypad power. So if we had a 30-channel PDM, maybe I would change one of my outputs to coil and maybe another one of my outputs to just keypad power. But because we're only 14, you know, we're kind of working on a tight output to run an entire vehicle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, you know, I have my keypad turning on my coil. I felt that that was safe in the sense that when the coil's on, the keypad can be on. The car doesn't have to be on for the coil to have power. It's not gonna overhear on the amps. It's not gonna show like 20 amps or anything like that, just having the coil active. So I mean, yeah, it's switched on. In theory, if you were like had your key on and you were messing with your coils, you could potentially short it out, but then it would, you know, just trip on the PDM. So I mean, there's fail safes in place for this, and I put my fuse current at 20. And that's probably too much for the keypad, but I decided to make that call to put the coil and the keypad on the same output. So what I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to have this one on or controlled by the master switch. But also I could change it to switch ignition switch. Kind of the same thing. But what I'll do for right now is I'll just have it controlled by the master switch. This way, when we're testing, we're ensure that it's going to work and everything like that. So, but essentially, those are the same things. I could even go back and change that to controlled by function later. But I just really want to like test this unit, and I may go back in and fine tune some stuff like that. Okay, ECU. So remember we did that infinity switch on switches. Well, I may end up changing that as well later, but let's just go ahead and make the control for the ECU, the switch ignition switch. Actually, let's do it. Let's do this one for function. Function ignition. Okay, we can dial in the function later as well. I did 7 amps for the output because our injectors are probably going to be on the same output. So I mean, you have 4 to 12 injectors. You could have 8 if you had a 4-cylinder car with 2 sets, and I mean they're only going to be about like less than an amp each. This output can go all the way to 10. If you had like 20 injectors somehow with like a V10 engine with staged injection, and you may end up wanting to put this on a different output, like a 22 amp output, or maybe you decided to just use one of the spares and give the same function. So you can break it up, but like I said, you just got to use your discretion on how many amps you think it's going to take. And when you're on the dyno, if you have to make, split-second changes, then you'd, have to break up some outputs and change some stuff if you see that your duty cycle on your injectors are going way up, and then it's drawing more amps, and it could even trigger a fault. So yeah, just that's what you got to do, because I don't know if you guys are using 20 fuel injectors on one output, or if you got 4 in an ECU. Like, it's not, 4 injectors in an ECU is like nothing. You could have this number probably less than 7. So that's what I'm going to do there. And then for output spare water pump, I'll just set this up for now, but I mean, it's really like a spare. So this could be the function. What did I say it was? It would be water pump right here. It's only 5 amps. So, I mean, really, you'd probably want more than that. You could go even just up to 10. Water pumps are going to draw closer to 10, probably around 8 or something like that. Brake lights. So let's do switch. So this is just, I mean, brake lights aren't going to need any like keypad or anything like that to work. They're just going to be like a switch. So, I mean, they could even in theory be a CAN message from the ECU if you wanted to use brake pressure as an input over the CAN bus from the ECU, take the pressure sensor and then give it like CAN. And that's way more than we're going to get into, but like there's so much you can do here. So I'm just going to find the brake light switch. So essentially what's going on here is when you ground the brake light switch, in our case, or power it, but in our case, it's going to be grounded. It's just going to turn on the output. So it's as simple as brake lights control is a switched ground, and then it will turn on this output up to 6 amps. And brake lights tend to draw a little bit of amps because they're old, just like standard bulb technology in a lot of the older cars. So, I mean, I just give it 6. We could dial that in. It might end up only being 4, but, let's go ahead and do that. Output right indicator. Let's call the function for the, this is the right indicator. So do a right indicator, do it 5 amps. It's probably fine for a little flashing bulb. Left indicator. Let's do the function left indicator. I think I'm doing all this right. I'm not calling any of these power. I don't want any of these to say power on the end because the power's for the toggle, and that's the other part of it. So you want to make sure you select the right one. Output headlights. What do we want our headlights to be controlled by? Well, we have a keypad and we have potentially a toggle switch. So let's give it the function. So it's going to be headlights. I think it's called main lights. Okay, I might change that name, but whatever. I mean, main lights, headlights. It is what it is. Spare for the wipers. Let's turn these off for right now. When this is all finished, I may have something set up for here, but for now, like I mean, these are spares and there's no sense in dedicating control to any of that stuff. But just to kind of retouch here, you guys see outputs 1 through 6 are higher amp. So if I double click that, it lets you go 1 to 22 amps. 6 and below, it only lets you go to 10 amps. So it's pretty easy to remember. Just like the first 6 are going to be all your high load stuff. Okay, so up to 22 amps, and everything below that will be to 10. And the next thing that I'd like to do is, let's just go to the configuration and see. We did our master switches. We did that. We did switched inputs. We did functions. We did outputs. And I remember I did outputs. I named them first. Then I went to functions. Then I went back down to naming outputs. Battery voltage alarms. So next thing is alarms. What I could do here is battery voltage alarm. I could set this as a threshold. So when I'm connected, it'll basically go red and alert me within the PDM that it's been low for more than 10 seconds. So I give that threshold. I can make this number 1 amp. I could make it just depends. You're gonna be able to, depends on what voltage battery you have too. If you guys are running like race cars with drag race cars with like 16-volt batteries or something like that, you can change that number to like, 15 or something like that. But in our case, 11 safe because we're doing 12-volt systems on this one. Okay, so configuration, we just outputs battery voltage, CAN bus setup. So I'll just show you guys this, but this looks very intimidating to most people. These will be transmitting and receiving information from an ECU, and you got to basically figure out what byte it's on, what bit it's on, and then you can send and receive a bunch of information. But that's more than we're going to really get into, especially in this. And me, I'm not the best at CAN stuff like that. Like I could do it, but I like kind of have to sit down and really figure it out. And I don't really want to get into that right now. So CAN bus setup, but what we are setting up is keypad CAN. So you got to think about it as there's CAN information from the car, so it can be ECU, etc. But we're just working with the keypad because in this case, we're just talking. We just want the keypad to talk to the PDM. So let's go to keypad. So with this setup, I may have to actually plug in my system and connect it online. But what I want to do and show you guys here is the keypad configuration. All right, so the keypad configurator, I basically jumped ahead probably a little bit, and what I'm going to do is just take a second and I'm going to kind of pause everything, and I am going to connect the power to my PDM, and hopefully after that we will see online down here in the red. It's going to say it's offline now. Hopefully it'll be green and it'll be online, because then I can send a configuration on my keypad. So let's get to this right now, and let me just take a pause, and hopefully I'll have it connected in just a second. All right, so let me fill you guys in real quick with what happened. I connected, and what I ended up doing was it prompted me, and what I had to do was I had to go file save and save my configuration. That's the first thing I did, save it, okay? And then I went to go online, retrieve module file. So I went online, it retrieved the module file, but there's nothing on this PDM, okay? And it was all blank. It was kind of like what I started with, but that's why I did file save before I did that. So then what I did after that is I went to load file from PC, send to module if online, just like how you can see it's highlighted right now. And then boom, this popped up. So it basically connected me and it sent this configuration to my PDM. So it's on there, it's live. And the first thing that you may notice is one that, I don't have the CAN keypad screen up anymore. It went away, I just have to open it again. And then you can see that there's all these green active things going on. So because my PDM was programmed to be on, controlled by master switch for coil and keypad power, okay, it's on, so it's like it's working. And then the next one is function ignition for ECU. So technically, if my ECU is plugged into my car, which my car is 15 minutes away from this PDM right now, it would be on. My output would be on and it would be powering something. But if you look over here on the right side, all these aren't drawing any amps because there's nothing of really load connected to the other end. Like there's no ECU connected to my ECU output, which is on right here. Down here on active, so these are the functions that are on. So I mean, we don't need to get into all this right this minute, but it's really cool to be able to see like the active state, not active, active, and then you can see like what's switched on. You can see that the ignition switch is the only one active on the switches. All right, so let's jump back to CAN keypad because I want to get this going. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keypad 1, enable. Okay, it's already asking me to do something down here. I'm going to enable it. Default settings. Keypad power output. This is super important. So my keypad, remember, is on the ignition coil power. Okay, so output number 6, coil power. All right, so I'm going to go output 6, right? Now I got indicator brightness. So I can change the brightness of the little indicators on the keypad. I can do backlit brightness, okay? I'm just gonna make that one like 50. So it's like 50%. So there'll be a backlit lighting to it. You could dial this in later. This is an alternate brightness control, so you can have like an external brightness control, like on like a button. You could have a function for a brightness control. So that would mean like a keypad could be you could press it and it could be dimming or something like that. Like if you were toggling on your headlights, let's say, you could have when the headlight turns on. Like that sounds actually pretty cool right now. So if we did like main lights, and then we could have the main lights backlit brightness 100%, right? Indicator brightness 10. So that might be like crazy, but maybe we could just change it to 80 for now. Okay, so when the main lights are on, because you'd assume that your main lights are probably going to be on when it's dark outside, so then you want some brightness. So then you can have your keypad shine at 80%, right? This right here section is pretty much for not for use right now, but it's giving you the can open address. And if you had a different keypad that wasn't one of ours or the the Gray Hill style, then you can have a different address here. But this is going to be all set up for the keypad that we have. Okay, keypad password. So how we have it set up with Moristech is that you actually buy keypad passwords and you would purchase them from us. And the reason why we do this is because you might want to have you might not need a keypad. You might not want a CAN keypad. You want to just send, triggers to all your inputs. And actually, I've built cars where, if it's a vintage car or something, you want your steering stock to turn on your indicator or your headlights rather than a keypad, because the keypad might look out of place on a vintage car. So then it's going to save you the money. You don't have to buy a keypad password and you don't have to buy a keypad. And it's going to get the price of the PDM down a lot. So, I mean, you could potentially save $550 on a keypad, then another like $150, $200 on a password, whatever they cost. I forgot off the top of my head. And, it's like, dude, that's a lot of money. And that's 700 plus whatever dollars that you'd be saving by not even dealing with any of this keypad stuff. But in this case, like, we really like the keypad. We think it's a super cool option. Well, we're going to buy a password or buy a keypad. And in this case, I have already purchased my keypad password from Moristech. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the password right now. So see, it worked. And keypad communication status normal. You want this to be green. If you ever have issues with your keypad, make sure that this, like, go into the software and look in the configuration section and make sure this says normal. So this is important. This is green, and this is important because here's my password. I'm in. It gives you information on making sure that other CAN modules are not connected. And I was reading through it and going, okay, and everything's just connected as the keypad. And yep, I got it. So I'm excited about that. Let me press OK here. And then see how this is flashing at me? It says module needs updating. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to click update module. It throws it at it. And the cool thing is that my keypad is now illuminated. And what I could do to just kind of show you guys is have a look on the screen right there. Okay. I'm going to hit a button. So this is for the starter. Okay. Now that's interesting because that's actually not right. So what I need that to not latch. I need that to be momentary. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change that. But let me just, just kind of wanted to show you guys how the system works. I'm pressing, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm pressing button 6. Okay, button 6, and it's going, just look down here. It's on. Now it's off. I'm just hitting the button. Okay, that's my spare water pump. I'm turning it on by my button. I'm overriding it right there. So that's working. So that's super cool. Good progress. I'll figure out the starter, and then we have the function there for the water pump. That one, everything's going there. So I'm pretty confident that everything is going to be working. One thing that I wanted to show you is up in the help section. This is super great. So there's diagrams. Okay. The software that I'm using right now, I'm really actually reluctant to click out of this. I think that it might stop and pause me. So maybe I'll just go through this. We have, so there's information on a P12. So that's we can call it the older unit, but it's just the most slimmed down version unit. We have the P30, which is the most souped up unit, has 30 outputs. And then we have the P14 is the one that we're currently working with. And this is the probably like best bang for the buck right now, but it is half the size of the 30. So it just depends on how many outputs you need for your car. We have general descriptions, okay, general information there. Connector pinout. So this is great. You can click that and it's going to give you a full pinout diagram. It'll give you connector view. It'll tell you how you read the connector, what kind of connector it is, where you might be able to get, spare parts or whatever. Race vehicle power wiring. That's super nice to look at to just kind of figure out like, how the starter and the alternator are going to play into this whole puzzle. So that's going to show you all your vehicle power wiring and a schematic for that. So you can follow along and do it to the manufacturer's recommendations. The next one is going to be CAN bus wiring. That's pretty standard issue CAN bus wiring diagram. It's very easy to understand. It's basically a twisted pair, and then there's terminating resistors on the ends. And that just triggered something in my mind that I should show you guys for that a little later for CAN bus stuff. Wiper motor wiring. So this is going to give you like wiring, and you can wire in a park switch. So it parks, and it's just going to be a wiper motor wiring diagram to help you kind of understand how that works with the different speeds and inputs. It's kind of, wiring wipers is interesting, but with this diagram, it's super straightforward. P14 Fault Indicator. What is that? It shows you the faults. I'll prop that. I'll bring that up in a minute and look at it, but we'll come back. Fuse characteristics. This shows you like, I think it was like how the fuses blow and different output. I don't remember, to be honest. I have to look at that again as well. And then P14 CAN bus information. So that's going to be all your outputs and info on how to connect to ECUs and stuff like that. There is also, let's see, the CAN open keypad. It's pretty cool. That shows you what buttons are what numbers associated to it. So definitely look at that. It's going to show you like when you're over here and I say, button 2 is starter. Well, what does that mean? What's button 2? So it shows you what button 2 is on a visual layout. It gives you information on the wiring diagram for the keypad so you can make sure that you wire it in properly. Software and configurations, about, so that's just general information, whatever, but definitely look through all these, and especially all these diagrams. Super important to kind of familiarize yourself with that. So let's just go down a little bit more. We have CAN keypad, which we just did. I'll show you guys again. This is all green, everything's working there. Okay, I can go in there and make changes. And then we have the indicators. So this is a whole nother can of worms of stuff that I'll have pre-set up. probably gonna end up coming back to this, but this is gonna be, you know, on a keypad, you see the little lights. You'll see green, and then you'll see yellow, and then you'll see red. So what we're gonna do is we're going to be able to configure how those are working. So the most basic thing you may think of is I want the green to be on when the output is on. So then we're gonna go ahead and we can add that, okay? I don't want to get into this 100%, but we give an indicator a name. What keypad is it on? It's grayed out as only one because we only have one keypad set up. What button number? So there again, you have to know what button number it is. And just quickly, it's viewed from the upper left corner as 1, 2, and then 3 is the upper right corner. And then it jumps down a row and then goes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, all the way to 12. And then the 12 will end in the bottom right corner. And that's with the key green, yellow, red at the top of the switch. Okay, so that's just kind of information on the button numbers. And then here's the indicator number. So green, it wasn't yellow, it was orange, my bad. So green, orange, red, 1, 2, 3. So you're gonna give, then they give the numbers as 1 is green, 2 is orange, 3 is red, right? And then you can give it a control. And then if you, depending on what you select here, it may open up an output number, indicator, when output is, etc. So that's kind of cool, and you can set up all those, and I am going to set those up here shortly. But let me just kind of continue through. So that's the keypad indicators that I was just at. Keypad input data. We are not going to have to do anything here with that right now, but it's here for, I don't know, I don't really use that right now. So, and then counters. So counters are cool. This is a neat thing that you can add if you want. You can have your windshield wipers pulse train kind of through, and what you could do is you can have it like, you could have, essentially we have a 12 position keypad here. But if you think about it, we actually have 3 times that potential because we have a green indicator, a yellow or an orange, excuse me, indicator, and then a red indicator at the top of the keypads. So you can actually use those as separate buttons in a sense, and you could, you know, press button 1 3 times, and then it'll get you to red, and it can that could be a separate button technically than if you just were to press it once and you have it set up just being on or off. So that's what the counters do, and we can get into that later. And really, it's good for like things like windshield wipers and stuff like that. So not something that we're probably going to have set up on this startup file, the base map for you guys essentially. But the next thing that I would probably get into in this video is to touch on the keypad indicators. All right, guys, let's go through and set up a keypad indicator. So what we're going to do is start here, go add, and for our indicator name, we could just call this, let's just go keypad. What do I really want to call this? So let's do keypad ignition. Let's call this IGN. I've been trying to, I'm not very good at keeping things consistent. Keypad ignition key. Okay. This is going to be button 1, and it's going to be indicator 1 green. And then what we're going to do is, let's see. Let's do this one as the control as a function. Let's see what we have to work with here. Function ignition. Okay. So when the function ignition is on, then our indicator is going to go with a little green light, and then it's going to show that it's on. So that way you're not just pushing a keypad and you don't know if the button's on or button's off or whatever. It gives you a light that tells you what's up and what's going on. Okay. It's asking for me to update the module, and I won't do it right away. There's no need. Okay. Add. So I could see it. Keypad. Ignition. Let's see what we're gonna do here. So let's do key. And then we're gonna call this one a fuse. I like to call it a fuse. So it's kind of telling us that there could be a reset. So button 1, let's do orange. Let's do the control as, well, let's do it like the coils and the keypads one. So what we're gonna do is control, let me see what my choices are here. Let's do it like this: output, coil, and keypad power. So basically, if the coils have an issue, like they're shorted out, it will go orange. But we want it to be when output has, let's call this one has a fault. So what that means is when the output is currently having a fault, then it's going to go orange for us. So it's like coil, grounded out. Maybe you tagged a wall when you were drifting, and something shorted out your coil power. Instantly, the driver will see this go from green to red when the output has a fault. And what's happening in that output is it's basically retrying. It's retrying on the parameters. So because it's retrying, it's currently having a fault. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So now we have keypad ignition key. We have essentially a green, which is indicator 1. Then we have a fuse, which is indicator 2. Okay, has a fault. Then we're going to go keypad ignition. And then we should call this one I guess you can call it, I don't want to call it below, but like it's out, right? So we have fuse is basically tripped, and then we have it's down. It's completely I'm having a hard time figuring out what I want to call this now. So keypad ignition fail, let's just call it, or fault. Let's call it okay, let's call it fault. I can change this. So keypad number, button number 1, indicator, this is going to be red. So now it's basically down for the count. Control, let's do the ignition again. Output coil had a fault. Okay, so that means that when the driver sees that ignition is red, it's red and it's done. Like output is doesn't even have power anymore. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so it doesn't even have power. Okay, so now we have the ignition key for the coil is indicator 1, 2, and 3. So red. So 3 is now red. Okay. So this is pretty cool because you're able to set this up, and I mean you could have it where where if it did one retry, it goes red, or you can, so basically the sensitivity can change. And this is really nice because then your driver can see kind of what's going on in real time and not have to just be like guessing, you know, like if all these are red, you know, the car's not going to probably drive, and maybe there'll be like a telemetry system on the car, and then they can report back to the pits and just be like, yo, it's done, guys. Like, we hit this, and my coils are gone, my injectors are gone, ECU's not turning on, or ECU has a fault or had a fault or whatever. So the driver can know these things, and it's really cool to be able to do that. So for now, I'm just gonna, you know, spend some time adding all these. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to just update the module. So if I update it, now everything is up to date. Parameters in theory could change if you've done changes on your in the background, then some of these green lights could be on or go off, just depending on how you have it set up. But that's pretty much a quick walkthrough. I may like jump back and show you guys more of these keypad indicators if I'm so inclined. But that'll pretty much give you the quick rundown of what's going on, and if I make any changes within this PDM, because I'm going to be testing on a bench, and I'll let you guys know if like there was a couple things that worked or didn't work. And I'd like to also have a video where I'm actually showing it on a bench and like things actually working. And then maybe in a car would be ideal after that, so you could see like all the steps of this. But I think it's really important to see how easy this is to program. I am not by any means a programmer. I don't know anything about codes. I don't think in ones and zeros. I just think that I'm actually not as smart as I probably should be with this kind of stuff, but I'm able to get this PDM set up, and I'm able to kind of troubleshoot and diagnose things, and I understand how they work now. So pretty cool. And I thank you guys for joining me on this, and we will talk soon, and there should be more videos shortly. Thanks. Bye.